Hey y'all, Grandma Rose here. I am going to show you how to cast on. Now, there are several different methods to cast on for socks. Well, there are several different methods to cast on knitting. And you may even know some of them. And some of them are easier than others. The one that I'm going to show you is medium difficulty. It's not the most difficult and it's not the easiest. But if you're going to knit socks, if you're going to wear socks, the top of the socks have to be able to stretch over your foot. There's no getting around that. If you cast on one of these easy methods, the top's not going to be stretchy. So if you're going to wear socks or you're going to knit socks, you have to be able to know how to cast on with a stretchy method. The one that I'm going to show you, the long tail cast on, is one of the stretchier methods, not the stretchiest. Now the one that I use generally for myself, for my own socks, I do a different one that's a little bit more difficult, not a lot, but not quite the standard, and the long tail cast on is one of the standard methods for casting on. So let's get started. Now the reason it's called the long tail cast on is because you have to pull out a length of yarn, an estimate, how many stitches you're going, how much length you need to finish casting on your entire round, how many stitches you have. 56 stitches, 64 stitches, 72 stitches, somewhere in that range for a pair of socks. House slippers on bigger yarn, going to be less yarn. The stitches are bigger, so you'll need less stitches. Bigger needles. I'm showing you on a larger needle. This is a worsted weight gauge. If you were at a craft store and looking at numbers, it's a number 4. Worsted weight. This is the same yarn that I'm using knitting my sweater. And I just went ahead and pulled out this yarn because I'm getting ready to need to change yarns anyway. I might as well have out the one that I'm working on. So this one is just, and against the white paper, this red shows up really well. Another reason for choosing this. So I'm not going to cast on a lot of stitches. So I'm just going to get a little bit of yarn here, like that, just some. It's the 2 pieces. Here's the tail. There's the side that's attached to the hank of yarn. Now you want the tail to be on the left side. Just do. Now the way you start is like a handshake. So you put the yarn with the tail to the left, the loop at the top, and grab hold of it, like that. See that? Now you take your thumb and your index finger and stick them through that loop, just like that, to make what looks like a coat hanger. Does that look sort of like a coat hanger? Sort of? Maybe not. Anyway, it's a triangle. You make a triangular shape, grabbing the yarn with these fingers and having your thumb and your forefinger stretched to make it a straight piece here at the top. Now I'm using the shortest needles that I have simply because, and these are double pointed needles. If you were knitting this in the round using double pointed needles, this is what you would use to cast on. I'm going to show you how to do it one way, and then I may show you how to do it with the double pointed needles. So you can either make a slip stitch like that and start with the slip stitch, or you can just hold it, put your finger on top of it, and that's what I usually do. It doesn't matter. Now the first thing you do is with your finger on top of this, holding this in place, you bring this down. So you bring it down and you catch that loop on your thumb, and then you swing it around and you catch this loop right here, and then you bring it through and let your thumb go, and then put your thumb back in again, and you've made a stitch. Let's do this again several times. So here we go. Now I don't need to hold it, but I probably will just because it's easier. Put your, here is your parallel line right here with the bottom of that triangle. Bring it down. So you want to bring it down so the tip of this is below this yarn here on your thumb. Bring it down, put the tip up through that, twist it around. I actually usually twist my hand like that. It's easier for me. Whichever way is easy for you. Bring this around and catch this thread that's on your finger. You've got a thread around the back side of your finger and across the inside of your finger. So you want to do the one that's coming across the inside of your finger. Let's do that again. So here, come underneath it, catch this thread that's on your thumb, and don't take it off at this point. You're catching that loop. And you bring it around, and you catch this loop right here from the top. Do that one more time. From underneath on the left, you come up through this loop. And from on top, on this side, you come down through that loop. And then you bring the tip of your needle through that loop on your thumb and take your thumb out. Then you put your thumb back in. And that makes a stitch, like that. We've got 3 stitches on the needle now. Do it again. Come over underneath this loop, bring the tip of your yarn underneath this loop, bring the tip of your needle up through the loop on your thumb. Swing it around, and over the loop on your finger, you come down and through that loop, and then back up through the thumb. And let go of your thumb. Pull it tight. Not tight. You don't want to jam it on there. Just pull it a little snug, but not tight. And now you've got 4 stitches. Let's do it again. Bring it down. Bring the tip of your needle down. The tip up under this loop on your thumb. Swing it around, or like I do, bring your finger around. The method's the same. Either way, you're bringing the tip over that way, right? So either bring the tip over using your right hand, the method with your wrist here, or bring the method with your left. Either way, it works. Do you see this? Let me do it again. Up under your thumb, over, on top of the loop on your finger, and then you bring it back through this loop that's on your thumb, like that. Let your thumb go. And then I use your thumb to kind of pull it snug. See that? Let's do it again. Under, through the loop on your thumb, over, through the loop on your finger, back through the loop on your thumb, let your thumb go, put your thumb back in, and that helps pull that snug. Now one more time. Under, through the loop on your thumb, over the loop on your finger, through the loop on your thumb, back the other way. Let go and pull it snug. Under, over, through. You get into a rhythm. Under, over, through. Under, over. Oops, I missed that one. Under, over, through. Under, over, through. Under, over, through. Under, over, through. Now look here, we've got that many stitches on the needle. And there's still a little bit of a tail left. So you can see where you need to have an estimate of how much yarn you need to cast on. For me, when I'm casting on using fingering weight yarn and the size 1 or 0 needles, you may, depending on how tight you knit or how loose you knit, you may need to change your needle size. You may need 0 needles, or you may need 2 needles. I can't tell you exactly what size needles you're going to need. It's going to be up to you and how you knit. If you are a loose knitter, then you'll need smaller needles than if you're a tight knitter. Because the gauge is what counts, not how many stitches you have, not what needle size you have, but what gauge, how many times the yarn has to wrap around the needle to make a certain number of inches. And that's what your gauge is. How many stitches you make to cover a certain number of inches. If your stitches are tight, it's going to take more stitches to make that number of inches. If your stitches are loose, it's not going to take as many. So you need to adjust your needle size to make it where you have the right number of stitches in a certain space. Generally, for knitting socks, at least the gauge on the pattern that I wrote, the gauge is 8 stitches per inch. And that's pretty much of a, not, let's say not written in stone, but it's a pretty standard gauge for fingering weight yarn. It's 8 stitches per inch. And that way, if you have 56 stitches and you have 8 stitches per inch, you're going to be knitting a circumference of 7 inches. The same thing, 64 stitches is 8 times 8. So you'll have 8 inches that you're going to be knitting around, and 72 stitches is 9. Right?